Let's jump right into the book of Revelation. It's filled with all this mysterious, kind of confusing imagery. But what if some of its most baffling numbers aren't random at all? What if they're actually a code, spelling out a single, powerful story? Well, today, we're going to try and decode it. So deep in the final chapters, we get this incredible vision of the New Jerusalem. But here's where it gets weird. When you actually look at the blueprint, the dimensions are, well, they're bizarre. The city is described as a perfect cube. 12,000 furlongs long, wide, and get this, high. Let's just try to wrap our heads around that for a second. A furlong, it's an old unit of measurement, right? 12,000 of them is roughly 1,500 miles. So we're talking about a cube that stretches from, say, Maine all the way down to Florida, and then goes 1,500 miles straight up into space. I mean, that just completely defies physics. So what if the point isn't literal at all? What if these numbers are actually symbols for something else entirely?
Yeah, to understand this city, we have to stop thinking like architects and start thinking more like code breakers. The key isn't in the literal measurements. No, it's hidden in the symbolic language of the numbers themselves. So okay, let's totally shift our perspective here. This isn't a physical blueprint for a city. A perfect cube, something equal in every single dimension, was a really powerful ancient symbol. It stands for stability, for balance, and for absolute completeness. It's basically the ultimate picture of divine perfection. Now, here's the interesting part. To really get this symbol of perfection, we first have to look at its complete opposite. And our first clue in this whole mystery is a really strange, recurring number. 3.5. This number, 3.5, it just keeps popping up in biblical prophecy. And you know what? It almost never means something good. It's a number that just feels off. Think about it. It's the number 7, a number of perfection, cut right in half. It's fundamentally incomplete. And that is exactly what it symbolizes. 3.5 consistently represents a period of trial, suffering, or a mission that gets interrupted or cut off before it can be finished. It's the number of something broken. And you see it disguised in all these different ways. Sometimes it's 1,260 days, other times it's 42 months. Or in places like Daniel and Revelation, you get this cryptic phrase, a time, times, and half a time. But you do the math, they all equal 3.5 years. And here's what's really crucial, that last point. This is also the traditional length of Jesus' earthly ministry, right before it was so abruptly cut short by the cross. Just hang on to that thought.
Okay, so we've got our broken number, 3.5. Now let's circle back to that city for our second major clue, that absolutely massive, seemingly perfect number from its measurements. 12,000. Compared to that fractured 3.5, this number just feels immense, whole, and divinely ordered. It's not just a big number thrown in there to sound impressive. And just like 3.5, the number 12,000 is absolutely packed with symbolic weight. It points to total completion, to divine order, and the glorious fulfillment of God's people on a truly massive, all-encompassing scale. And here's kind of how that meaning is built. The number 12, right? It consistently represents God's people and his structure. Think of the 12 tribes of Israel or the 12 apostles. Then you have the number 1,000, which symbolizes divine fullness, a massive scale. So when you put them together, 12,000 becomes this incredible symbol for the total, glorious, and perfectly complete community of God. But wait, there's even another layer here. That perfect cube shape? Totally not random. In the ancient Israelite temple, the absolute most sacred space, the Holy of Holies, where God's presence was said to dwell, was also a perfect cube. So this city isn't just a symbol of perfection, it's a symbol of God dwelling perfectly with his people. It's a really deep image. Okay, so this is the crucial point. We now have two incredibly powerful, totally contrasting numbers. 3.5, representing something broken and cut off, and 12,000, representing something divinely perfect and complete. So now it's time to connect the dots. This really is the heart of the puzzle, right? How in the world do you get from a broken 3.5 to a perfect 12,000? What's the bridge? What connects these two completely opposite ideas? Well, the turning point is the cross. Those 3.5 years of ministry, which looked like a total failure when it was cut off, are completely transformed by that one single event. It becomes the foundation for the 12,000, for the full perfected kingdom of God. What looked like a failure was actually the beginning. Here's a great way to think about it. That 3.5-year ministry is like a single seed, a grain of wheat, that falls into the ground and dies. On the surface, it looks like the end. But that death is exactly what allows it to produce this massive harvest, the 12,000. It's like that tiny mustard seed that was always destined to grow into a great sprawling tree. So, let's put it all together. What is the final meaning here? What is the complete story that these numbers are trying to tell us? This really nails it. Jesus's 3.5-year ministry, yeah, it was cut off at the cross, but it was multiplied in the resurrection. So the New Jerusalem's 12,000 furlongs represent the full, perfected kingdom that was birthed out of his completed work. It's perfect. So you see, the story hidden in these numbers isn't really about failure being overcome. It's a story about intentional design. It suggests that the broken, seemingly incomplete beginning was actually the necessary seed for this glorious, perfect completion. The brokenness, in a way, was part of the plan all along. And that, it leaves us with a pretty fascinating question. If a story this profound, a story about brokenness and redemption, can be hidden inside ancient numbers, it just makes you wonder, what other hidden meanings are out there, just waiting to be uncovered?